Hello everyone, and thanks for joining the weekly Falco community call. I am screen sharing my screen with today's topics and taking notes about the things we like to discuss. We are recording this call and as usual, the meeting notes with the link of the recording will be pushed to the Git repository. So, the first thing is if you want to add your name and your GitHub handle into the who joined the section. For us, this is helpful to track who is joining this call. Thank you. And now let's start with this week highlights. The first one is for me and is about Falco Exporter. We are happy to announce that we released the very first version of Falco Exporter. Basically, it's a Prometheus metrics exporter for Falco output events. I can give you a very brief overview of that. The Falco exporter, of course, needs Falco installed and running with the gRPC output enabled. When you have Falco installed and running, you can run it manually or deploy it in Kubernetes. Of course, one of the easier way to deploy Falco exporter is by using the Helm chart that we provide inside the Git repository. Also, we added also the dashboard for Grafana, where you can see the metrics exported by Falco. Another thing, we are in the making of a blog post for that, and I think very soon we will post the blog post with all steps to run Falco inside a kind cluster, install a Falco exporter, run Prometheus, and install the Grafana dashboard.
I'm going to add a link to the HackMD where we're working on the blog post to the doc as well, if folks want to take a look.
Sure. This is the work in progress. Okay. The second highlight is Falco 21 has been released, and I think Leo and Chris want to talk about this.
Well, I spent most of the evening yesterday, so I would rather prefer not talking about it, but also because Chris left me alone. But we released Falco 21, Falco 021 with the new automated release process that me and Lorenzo put in place during the past 2 weeks. And basically, most anything went okay, straightforward until the last steps that I fixed later in the evening. Basically, now we have packages published on the open and public Bintray, DED, RPM, and binary repositories for both the Git tag version, so the stable one, and the development version, which means the commits that get merged on the master. Also, we automatically build and publish from those packages the Docker images that you can already find on the official Docker Hub account of Falco Security. And this is, in summary, everything that we can say without boring anyone.
So, Leo, I have a question.
Yep.
So I took notes yesterday before I had to go to the next meeting, and I left you alone. For the notes on the release here, one of the last steps was you had mentioned we had to do something with, I think, Netlify?
Yeah, and I did it.
Can you?
Sure.
Oh.
Basically, I can also show the screen to let everyone see how to do it, okay. we can maybe, Chris, take your notes, add the last steps, and publish them inside the documentation of Falco repository, so that they are written down and everyone knows the last manual steps that have to be done in order to release a Falco version. Anyway, let me share my screen 1 sec. I can't, Leo. You should.
Okay. Just a sec. Okay, go on.
Thank you. Yes. Basically, to let the Falco website automatically update to the latest version of Falco, which means this one, to let this automatically update, the release master, not on Netlify should log in into Netlify with his or her GitHub account, and then click on the falco.org website, click on deploys, and trigger a deploy with clearing cache, clear cache and deploy site. This is the last step of the release that updates the website to the latest Falco version.
What about the Docker images? What generates those? Is that Circle CI? Yep,
we build them into Circle CI and it automatically push to the Docker app.
Okay.
As I said yesterday, the last manual step is just building the changelog and reviewing manually the milestones and the PRs associated to that milestones. After that is done manually by the release team, everything else is basically automated.
Okay. Well, I think we still need we send out the email to the mailing list.
Yeah, the mailing list, the blog post, for example, that I wrote this morning. Yes, the tweet. Okay.
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 Cool. I'll ask you what else we need, and I'll open up a PR. Any questions on where we should document this? Like, does this belong in the Falco README maybe?
Or in the Falco README, or in the docs folder of Falco, maybe. Leo, can you open the Falco repository 1 sec, please?
Yes, sure.
And also disable Wayland, please, from your laptop.
No, I can't at the moment. I know it's a bit
I
laggy.
spent an half hour talking about this with you.
Very, it's lags.
Okay.
It lags. Okay, we don't have here a documentation, or we can create a release.md markdown file in the root, like we did for Falco CTL, or we put it somewhere else. I would prefer, since this is the Falco release process, it's not the same that maybe Falco CTL will have, not exactly the same, not the same that Falco exporter that Leo did. So I would prefer to have it here in this repository to avoid any confusion with other release process that we may have in the future.
So the reason I asked where I think we should put this is, and I'm going to go more into a little bit more information in a moment about kind of what's happened with the hubs and the CNCF and some of the stuff that's been going on in upstream CNCF. But I'm wondering if, as a project, if we want to start treating our release documentation, our release artifacts, our Helm charts, everything that you would potentially need to set up Falco in the same place as a project, or if we want to keep it specific to each of our sub-projects. And I don't really have a good answer for that. So I was wondering if maybe we could talk about it in a moment, or we could talk about it now, if folks had any thoughts on the best places to put just general release information, everything from where do we get the Docker files, where do we host the images, is this specific to this project, do we have a Helm chart, do we have other ways of installing this, where are the artifacts? I mean, I feel like there's a lot that goes into this for a lot of our different sub-projects here.
Probably my opinion is that for a generic description of where to get things, where to get artifacts, where to get Docker images and things like that. So not about how the release process is in reality, or how to do it, but the output. So the documentation of the output of the release process, probably a page on the website. I don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, a page where we list the repository that we have on Bintray with a little brief description of each of them, and then the description of the Docker images with That's it. And where to get them?
So I guess it's more of a question of what is the scope of what we release every time. Like, as a project, we're in a situation where we need to take a very clear stance on what we release and what we support and where we host a lot of this information. So on one hand, we could take a very minimalist approach and say that we create our Docker container images and we stop there. And everything else that the community does outside of that is governed and maintained by other entities outside of Falco. Or we take like a more inclusive approach and we say, Falco, the project, is responsible for container images, RPMs, Debian packages. Maybe we have repositories for OpenSUSE and Arch Linux. Maybe we have Helm charts. Maybe we have different GitOps style implementations. Like we kind of open up Pandora's box if we start supporting a lot of this. So I guess my question would be, and we don't have to answer this now, but at some point we should probably be very clear about what we as a project choose to support and where we scope our release artifacts and how we document them. But I agree with Leo that we should totally have a very clean, easy to understand description of what we support as a project in the official documentation.
Okay. Okay, can we go through the agenda? Yes. So
Yes.
the next point is Chris. Please, can we release 0.21.1?
Yeah, so this came out of yesterday after I got off the call when we were working on 0.21.0. We had one of the folks from frame.io. I think they mentioned they were going to be on the call. I don't know if anybody from frame.io is on the call.
Hey Chris, I'm here, Abhinav. How are you?
Oh, hey Abhinav, it's good to see you.
Yeah, same here.
So we have the CRI flag that Lorenzo implemented on one of the PRs, and I think there's been a few other PRs that have gone in since yesterday, including a small documentation change about these artifacts, which was kind of what I was just ranting about a moment ago. So I'm just wondering if we should try to schedule a release maybe in the next 1 week for a handful of smaller PRs just to get this feature into the release cycle, so that folks, both I think Shopify and frame.io have mentioned this on previous calls in the past, that this feature would be important for both of them to start experimenting with.
Chris, tonight I thought about this, and I do not agree anymore on releasing a patch version for this fix, mainly for one reason. Once it's merged, it will be already released as a development version. I mean, the scope, the goal of the process that we put in place is exactly this. When we will merge this PR, that PR from the master will be released in the dev repository, in the RPM dev repository. So there will be already a release, maybe not a tagged one, not a stable one, but maybe if Abhinav tries out the Lorenzo work in that development release and discovers that it works like a shard, later we can upgrade it like a stable release, so tagging that commit. Otherwise we just release, but we don't know if it's stable enough. We don't know if it suits the whole use case of Abhinav, of Shopify, or whatever. So it's already released. Once we merge, automatically it will get released, not like a stable one, but like a development version of Falco. So it will be like 0.21.0 minus the number of commits from the 0.21 plus the commit hash. And that will be the version containing what Abhinav needs. So the PR that Lorenzo did.
So I guess
this is my idea.
I agree. I think this is a good idea, that this is a important enough change that we should at least be testing it in some sort of production-like environment before we commit to a stable release. I guess my question for anyone on the call, Abhinav included, would be, how are you currently consuming Falco, and are we sure that you have everything you need, Docker images, Debian packages. I'm just a little unsure how y'all are currently managing consuming Falco.
So the way we are running on host right now. We are not using Docker containers. So I think we are using RPM build. I have to check and with my SRE that how he's installing. The only reason I am hesitant in not to try stable release because I tried another patch version last year and we couldn't get it installed. It was just keep crashing. And then when the stable release came out, then we could actually install it. And at the time I was working with Michael Ducey, and Marcus Stem as well. So it was just the only problem with the not the stable version is sometimes we cannot run it production, or we maybe have to running in development, but it's very hard to install because we just do not know what other bugs got into.
I remember that situation probably, but there's one thing that was probably the reason why that was happening was that before the module version and the BPF Pro version were tightly coupled to the Falco version. Right now, that is not anymore. The driver version in general is its own thing and it's defined in a different way. And we didn't update the driver version between those, between, the release that you have now and now. So just, having a new Falco binary should solve your problem. Also, I don't know if your team noticed it, but we now have a different mechanism for distributing Falco RPMs and Falco debs. So if you go to the Falco website, docs installation, you will find the new RPMs repository. And if you read after that, you will notice that there's also an RPM-dev repository. If you install from that RPM-dev, is exactly like if we would have tagged a release. So what I will do is merge now my PR with the flag that you need. Once it's merged, the process will process a release for that commit. That it will always be there. It will not be overwritten by anything else. So you can just try that and not get the new commits after that by installing, yum install Falco equal 0.21.0 plus 2 commits, the specific commit hash, and it will just work. If the kernel module doesn't work, I don't think you will even need to worry about that because the RPM package builds its own kernel module and it will build the same one that you had before and nothing changed after that. So I will be feeling extra secure when you install an RPM repository now because it's basically the same that you have right now. So I will not worry about that.
Okay. And
but don't blame me if that breaks.
Okay. No, I will not. So, but only changes between this intermediate release is the last stable release plus this bug fix.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. Sure.
Anyway, the PR is now merged in. So probably before the end of this call, you can grab the package, the RPM package that will be published on Bintray automatically. And also the Docker image with the master tag. So awesome. we can see it live, how it works.
Okay, I have to talk to my SRE team to do that. So I'll let them know and then let's see. We have to find the right infrastructure to install it, test it.
Just make sure that they change the repository they depend on.
Okay. Also because we changed also the GPG key, public key. So.
Got it. Lorenzo, would it be okay if we run into any issues, contact you on Slack?
I would say that it's probably best to raise any type of issue that's this global in the community channel and not to back channel on this one, just because if you're seeing it, there's a good chance other people are also seeing it as well.
Yes.
Sounds good.
That's what I was going to reply as well.
Got it. Thank you, guys.
Okay. Any other
I think
questions?
that it's important. Sorry, Leo, for interrupting you. It's important for you, Abhinav, to be, I would say, responsible for this specific thing to be working, because you are very, you have been, very advocating for this specific thing, and I hope that my fix worked as intended, but I have no way to test that it works very well in an environment like yours, because I don't have one like the one that you reported. So please be very loud with your test and make sure that we can include this in the next release.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for fixing it, Lorenzo. I really appreciate that.
Okay. If there are no other questions, we can continue with Liz again.
Well, before we go into my next item, I do have one thing I would maybe just ask if we want to do this as a project, being that we have two of our primary end users both concerned with this fix, and there's maybe some performance questions about how this performs in different environments. It might even be worthwhile to send an email out to the mailing list that just kind of highlights the flag, what we expect, and gives people an opportunity and a place to give feedback or share their findings, so that we can start to track a lot of this, so that it's not just chaotically shared throughout Slack. I'm happy to kick off an email if that sounds good to everyone else.
Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Sounds good.
Okay, and I think that.
Okay. Yeah, update on apps, Chris.
Okay, can I do a screen share really quick?
Yep. Just a moment.
I was sure you were already screen sharing,
Go on.
but it was Leo.
Okay, so a few things, and this kind of goes into a little bit what I was talking about earlier. So the update on the hubs is, I guess probably, let me hold on one second. I know y'all can't see this, but I have this really annoying Slack thing here that I can't ever figure out how to move on Linux. Okay, there we go. So I think the first thing is, there was the hub.cncf.io, and I brought this up last week, that this was kind of undiscussed and nobody really knew what was going on. We had a call on Monday. There was a TOC call on Tuesday that I had conflict with, so I wasn't able to attend. But Liz Rice sent out an email to the group, and basically my main takeaways here were the hub is now going to be managed like a regular open source project, meaning that it's community driven, and we're going to be able to be responsible for a lot of what the hub contains. And I think probably the most important thing here to point out is, if you go and you look, they had created hub.cncf.io as a public website before letting the rest of the community get involved. And if you go there to this day, it actually 404s. So they took the website down, and now it redirects to notfound.cncf.io. So with that being said, there's a lot of things to kind of unpack here, and as a community, we need to start making a decision on what we want to support or not support for Falco and potentially for other projects that we're trying to associate with, like OPA and some other ones. The first one is, do we in fact want to move resources like this? These are Falco rules. This isn't even Falco itself. This is just Falco rules. Do we want to move these type of resources to a global hub, which there's pros and cons to this that we can bring up, or we can start a thread, however we want to manage it. And then furthermore, if you even look at, if you go back in time and you look at what the hub used to contain, it contained Helm charts. And with that, if you go and you look at the Helm charts repository, you can see that we actually have a Falco directory here. And this is the Falco Helm chart. And I believe we referenced this in our documentation. And I think this is one of probably the most common ways that folks would install Falco in Kubernetes. So now we're in a situation where there's a global hub that was started, that was taken offline. We have a security hub for rules. There's also work in this Helm charts repository for even setting Falco up to begin with. and us as a community, this goes back to everything I was saying earlier. What do we want to support? Where do we draw the boundary? And what do we want to advertise as the official way to manage Falco in Kubernetes? So I don't want to maybe answer this now as much as I just want to introduce the problem space. And I think this is a thread that should continue over maybe the next 2 or 3 weeks. And this is something that we can really focus on while everybody is kind of stuck at home over the next few weeks here. So I wanted to bring this up and just see what people thought about this. If anybody has any thoughts or opinions, I'd love to hear them. Okay. No, Lode, go ahead.
I have a question, but I probably know the answer, but I want to help everyone reasoning. I would like to know what are the advantages for us if we do this. What will be the advantages?
So I think there's what we do ultimately is up to us as a community. And I think as long as we document this and follow the same process we do for everything else, the decision is ultimately up to us. One of the things that concerns me personally about having a global hub is if we go to the CNCF landscape and you look at the state of it today, there's a lot of things here. And this is a bit overwhelming for a person to try to reason about and to try to find something useful out of. And even if you go to the Helm charts, there is I think it's this one. Maybe not helm.sh. There's like a charts hub, I want to say.
Hub.helm.sh is the address. Yeah, that's it.
This top one? Yeah.
Yes.
If you come here, so this is a global application repository for all things Kubernetes related. And if you just even look on the right here and you start scrolling, you can see that there is a lot of different things you can potentially install. And it's good to have all this in one place, but are we doing the project a service or a disservice by getting involved with something that's this large with this many entities inside of it? So again, I think like if you look at the two extreme options here, one of which is taking a very minimalist approach and saying we offer a Docker or a container image that's OCI compliant and we stop there. And the other one is taking, okay, we're going to support everything. We're going to do Helm charts. We're going to do Debian packages. We're going to do RPMs. And then all of a sudden we're looking at our build process and realizing that the majority of the work that we do in the project is actually just supporting all of these different installation methods.
Yeah, it feels like the advantage of having a single place is potentially simplicity for end users, and maybe having an easy single place to go discover stuff. The disadvantage, in my opinion, is it stifles a bit competition and innovation because by definition, open source tries with having different attempts and creating winners by letting everybody try instead of just picking a winner, and this way you tend in the long term to be better. So that's what I'm personally concerned about.
So I think again, like I totally agree that having a thriving ecosystem where folks can try different avenues to install it is definitely a way to build a successful, adoptable open source project. I guess this is more of a question for the Falco community, which is what do we want to support? So, a good example here is looking at, like, for instance, the patch that we just got done discussing for the CRI implementation in Falco. We decided kind of as a community not to support that until the next release. What do we want to concern ourselves with? Is a Helm chart in scope or out of scope for what we want to support as an open source community?
I also have a question. Running a hub requires a substantial amount of curation. Suppose, for example, Falco rules and artifacts are put under the umbrella of this hub. Who would be the curator? Would this still be essentially the community, so pretty much people in this call and in our GitHub, or would there be a different group of people?
I mean, I think the starting point naturally here would be the same way we handle any new effort under the Falco project, which is to find a couple of stakeholders from the community, assign them as owners in the owners file, and then if we need to get other folks involved or make changes moving forward, we definitely can. So I think it's more of a Falco community curation, and if there's other people with opinions about how they would want to get involved or not get involved, then I think they're welcome to join the party, and we can definitely add them if needed.
I think that this switches our community from only maintaining an open source software to also maintaining a SaaS service. That's right.
I think that's definitely one way to think about it is on one end, we, as a community, if we support all of the different ways of installing and managing everything that we do, then we're effectively doing Falco as a service. But as an open source project, like, do we just stop at creating the bare minimum set of artifacts, and then we can let the open source other communities go forth and maintain and curate and handle everything else? And I just don't know where that responsibility lies and what we want to commit to as a community. And I think that this is like an engineering discussion, because once we commit to it, we have to conserve backwards compatibility for their open source end users. So again, I'm happy to keep this conversation going. We can maybe start a GitHub issue where we can start talking more about this, but this is just something that, with the state of the ecosystem, with everything that's going on with hubs, I think it's going to be in our best interest to approach a lot of this with, as a community, we have decided on this, and here's our documentation on this, then trying to figure it out at runtime, so to speak.
What I'm curious about is how do you take a decision like this? There are different stakeholders here. So do you just make everybody vote? Do you, because there's also like, people that are potentially more impacted more heavily by this, like the maintainers of Falco and so on. So probably everybody has an opinion on this. And the first thing that we should decide is how do we collect all of the opinions and what weight do we give to all of these opinions?
I agree. I definitely think we need a good way of collecting opinions. So here is a really good example in my mind of this happened. So this was December of 2018. This was an issue I raised in Kubernetes around the cluster API. And you can see here, we basically described the problem, and we voted by a series of GitHub thumbs ups. And ultimately, this became the word that we used in the API. So we could definitely do something similar to this. And I think a lot of other open source projects do something like this. But as a community, we should definitely give folks an opportunity to vote and voice their opinion and clearly describe the problem here, which is what I would like to start doing for this.
Sorry, Chris, can I add a thing? I think that we have to make clear, and maybe I already told this and I missed it, that we have two different problems. The first is that we want to let our community distribute and, author rules regardless the Falco repo and, regardless our approval. So they can, have a system in their, infrastructure that they can use to get rules dynamically or something like this. Yeah. And we also want Falco to be able to, download those rules and consume them in a way that it's not just install the rule or It's not like curl the rule and restart Falco, some kind of built-in mechanism, if I'm correct. The other is actually having the backend of this that lets you, fetch the rule and get it and version it, and, a system that lets you create this artifact as rules. So I think we have two things to decide here.
Yeah, so I think it's rules and it's Falco in general.
Yes.
Okay. So maybe like just as a way to just get all of this documented so that we can even start accepting feedback from other people in the community, I could take an action item to just write up a GitHub issue and kind of describe the two different issues for each different concern. And we can start even talking about how we want to make a decision here so that everyone has a chance to voice their opinion. I see a lot of heads going like this.
That sounds good.
Yes, sounds good.
Yep.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Chris.
Yeah.
Next topic, update on driver kit, Lore and Leo.
Loreo. Well, okay, I'll talk.
I talked too much already. I can mute myself.
Basically, driver kit is almost ready. I mean, it's ready. We have Debian, CentOS, Ubuntu, Ubuntu OS, vanilla targets. We already tested it with a bunch of kernel releases. We are just wiring things up. We created also in the test infra repository what we will call the drivers build grid, which is basically a bunch of YAML files with the kernel releases and the target system that we would like to pre-build kernel modules and the BPF probes in advance and distribute them through the open new repositories on Bin3 too. We just need to wire things up. The make file that basically implements the build grid is done. We are working on wiring it to Circle CI and fixing the last 2 or 3 little things that we have open on driver kit. So hopefully by the end of the next week, we will also have the automated distribution of pre-built kernel modules and pre-built BPF probes in place. This is the update. If I missed something, Lore, please feel free to.
You said everything.
Cool. Okay. Any question about driver kit or the build grid? I know Salvo Mazzarino is doing something related to flat car. If you have any question, or someone else.
Yeah.
I
Yes. I wanted to ask. I run the kernel and the BPF probe creation with the vanilla. Now, when, for instance, we have a distribution that supports the vanilla building, which is the approach that we advocate here? Do we want to say, okay, let's go with that, or just let's create a custom target for that distribution?
Well, in my opinion, we have two options here. The first one, probably the fastest one, as I said, probably right in Slack or in some issues, would be to try to build the kernel module or the BPF probe for flat car with vanilla target. If that works, we can decide to just leave it like that and advocate it through documentation. If you need flat car, just create a configuration file with target vanilla and so on. Or if it does not work, maybe because we need to fetch the headers from somewhere else for flat car, I don't know, or we just need to completely change the inside builder to build for flat car, we will create another target. But as I said, until we don't try it, we don't really know. Maybe I do not know because I do not know flat car. So the first thing will be like try it and put in an issue, the issue that you open and salvo the observations. I'm doing the same process for Linux-Kit. For example, I discovered that for Linux-Kit, the target that I'm creating works, but in reality, it's not so usable because Docker for Mac and Docker for Desktop uses Linux-Kit, but they recompile it, so the seed for run struct protection is different, so you can't insert the module. But I'm documenting everything.
I will
So
say
this is
that
the
for
process.
a maintainability point of view, I will create one for Flatcar and in general other distributions because of two reasons. First, it's easy if Flatcar changes anything to just change Flatcar without affecting anyone else. And the other thing is that in general, the vanilla compiling is slower than anything else because it needs to compile, prepare the kernel, which is slow. And I mean, probably you don't need it because I'm sure that Flatcar provides the files for everything already.
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, my question arises because basically Flatcar is released in 4 different flavors, let's say. They call the channel, stable, alpha, beta, and edge. So I was talking with Alban, who is the guy behind Flatcar from Kim.
Alban.
Yeah, him, and he would like to see outside all the channels, so have them stable alpha, beta, and the edge. This is why
We had a similar thing, sorry if I interrupted you, with CentOS 6, 7, 8. Very similar. We just realized that it's not important the operating system name or the way they distribute. The more important thing is if you can match the actual kernel and configuration so that you download the thing that you need. Because maybe, there's someone which still has, an old Flatcar, but they upgraded the kernel from another distribution. So it's better if you can match the kernel. So what we did was actually to go and search everywhere CentOS was providing, archives, Vault, whenever we can find the CentOS kernel and match. If we match it, we download and compile it without distinction. So we'll do the same.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, I've done. Thanks a lot, guys. Thanks, Lorenzo. Thanks, both Leo.
Lorenzo,
Thanks,
just a question. If I understood correctly, in this case, we can have just one target for Flatcar instead of...
I think it's better, yes.
Exactly, instead of this. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have one quick question. Is there a documentation on how to install the kernel driver and BPF module using the driver kit that you just mentioned?
I can reply to this. So when you compile the BPF probe, you don't need to place it anywhere specifically. You just need to pass the Falco BPF probe environment variable with as a value the path where you put the BPF probe itself. So you can just place it whenever it pleases you. I will say like in the user share Falco, it's Falco somewhere, where you like. We don't have a convention yet. For the kernel module, we will change, we didn't do it yet. We will change the Falco probe loader script to download from the new bin tray repository where driver kit puts all of those. If you compile it locally, so you use like driver kit yourself and you compile something, you can do insmod or mod probe if you put the module in the directory. It follows the process of every kernel module out there. We didn't document specific things that are documented in the kernel documentation in the distribution documentations, but we will try to provide some kind of automatic magic to download and insert the stuff that we can support.
Okay, I want just to add one thing. I opened
Did that reply,
an
Netch?
issue.
Oh yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, sorry, I wanted to just to add one thing. I opened an issue just to explain how to install the kernel module manually, because maybe some people want to try it locally, maybe also during development. And maybe we can put this very simple instruction somewhere. As Leo said, maybe the best place is the website.
Yeah, because if we document it only in driver kit, maybe it's not reached from anyone. Same thing in Falco. It's something that relates to the whole set of projects. So maybe the website is a good place. Also, I think that there should be something already written in the website. So maybe once we completed and rewrite the logic of Falco Probe Loader and all the things that Lorenzo described, we can put them in the website in a page or in a section.
Sounds good.
Yeah, also we had like other experiments. We also have a Go program that does the syscall to load modules in Falco CTL. So we should also decide what is our strategy here, which I don't know what we want to do because
all of them.
I mean, I think the original idea of Falco CTL was to start looking at how we approach things like installing Falco, installing rules, setting up the kernel module, setting up the BPF probe. A lot of these things seem like they could just live in the same Go project. And if we're building libraries for a lot of this, putting them all in the same place seemed to make a lot of sense, so that we're not rebuilding CLI tools for every single task we need to do. So I think, as we start to look at Falco CTL and we start to look at what we want to use it for, maybe there's a working group that can get spun out of this, and in that case we can look at how do we vendor driver kit, what do we use it for, and does Falco CTL still make sense? Do we just want to put everything driver related into driver kit? I think a lot of those questions still need to be answered.
I can just give an idea very quick. What driver kit does is just it's just a framework for building. I think we could do is to add a Falco CTL command that use the driver kit library to use driver kit, and also if we add in driver kit a command to build for the local machine, the person using the Falco CTL will be able to build the driver and whatever it's needed, or the BPF probe for the local machine where they are working or where they are wanting to deploy Falco. So I will say yes, just a matter of integrating those.
Yes, I agree too, and I would like to do that, if you agree.
You won the item.
Yes.
You're welcome, Leo.
Okay.
Please do it.
Thank you.
Grasso, please do it.
Thank you.
Wait, before we complete the call, we could look if the development release of that we were talking at the start of the call has completed or not, so that Abhinav maybe knows. Okay, if you go on the Circle CI, and so go on Bintray. Maybe go on Bintray. Bintray.com/Falco Security. Please.
Okay.
Okay. I don't see your screen update. Okay. Please go also on the Falco repository. Let me look at the commit hash of the last.
Maybe, do you want to share your screen?
Maybe, yes.
I think it's better, yes.
Yeah, I agree.
Sorry, I wanted you to do it. So This is the last commit with Lorenzo flag thing, EA46. If we go on, if we look here, we can see that basically the Circle CI thing is doing its own things, like
Excuse
testing.
me, Leo. Sorry, Leo. Please zoom.
No, sorry. Okay, I was saying this is the commit that will be released as a development version of Falco. As you can see, Circle CI is doing all the things that it has to do for releasing it. For example, there's this packages dev step, which basically does what we can look at here.
Oh, Abhinav is not here. You will be interested.
Oh, sorry. So it creates the version for this development version of Falco automatically, which will be 0.21.0-4, which means 4 commit more than the last stable release 0.21.0 with the commit hash that we just looked at. Then it will publish on the dev, RPM dev, and target dev repositories the artifact, the dev package, the RPM package, and so on, which means that Abhinav can be, it's already released, can go here. As you can see, if I zoom, we have here the version that Abhinav needs to, for testing, for trying it, already released, so he can basically download. He said RPM, he can download this file and just use it and report maybe if there are issues or not. He can use, and then when it's stable enough, we will include it into a stable release. So we are sure that you are releasing things that make sense. I mean, like stable. Okay, that's it. Sorry to bother you with this.
Okay. Thank you, Leo. I think the time is running out. The last, do you think, any volunteer for the next call? Nobody? And
As always, if nobody else signs up, I'll do it.
okay, we will ask again later in case someone wants to be the MC. And the very last thing, maybe Lorenzo told me about this. We should decide who will do the next release. Or maybe we wanted to explain the process again.
So yeah, we talked last time, and we said we want. So Leo is now off the hook because he did the last 2. So okay. Bye, Leo. Gracias.
I go, ciao, Boris.
So now we need 1 volunteer to work with me, and then I will do this release and hand to them, and we will continue to switch off every release.
Okay.
Okay, sure.
I am available if you want, or if someone else wants to do that.
Okay, you and I can plan it, and we have 1 month to make sure that we understand everything. So. Okay.
Yeah, because the release cycle that we decided, Leo, 2 calls ago was 1 month, if I don't remember wrong.
Okay.
So ideally, at the middle of April, we should release another version, stable version.
Okay.
There's one important thing now that there's not either me or Leo in this. The thing that you should do in this month to prepare for the release, if you didn't notice this yet, is make sure that all the pull requests that gets merged have the milestone.
Yeah.
And also make sure that all the release notes are very clear and very well written so that everyone understands when we
may follow the convention. Yeah, yesterday
Okay. Leo passed the thing to Chris very well. Very good.
Yeah. Leo yelled at me very good yesterday.
Yes.
Nice. I'm glad.
Okay. Okay. I think we had finished, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
thank you
to
for
everyone.
For school. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao.